Hey everyone. It's a sad, sad, sad day, and it's an absolute shame that things have come to this. The internet, from its very early inception, and that growth, that model that has taken it from back in the day, I remember in my younger years, in my teens, when you had to hook up your 300 baud modem. A lot of you people have probably never even heard internet speed measured in a baud rate. And instead of having forums or websites, you had what was called a bulletin board system, where you actually had to use DOS prompts and actually write the code and use, let's say you wanted to make a rectangle on your screen. Maybe you would use the asterisk as one line and maybe coming down. I mean, just the amount of time and effort that had to go into just creating the most minute, a ball bouncing across the screen, if I remember correctly, might have took, I don't know, like 20 lines of code just to get basically an oversized cursor to bounce across the screen. But back then, in its original inceptions, and for basically from that time onward, the internet used to be basically like the wild, wild west. Now, some people might think of that in some kind of negative manner, in some kind of negative aspect. Ooh, it's scary. But in reality, the modern world that we live in, in the digital era, flourished as a result of that kind of freedom. See, this is what I try to point out to people all the time. Freedom is a great thing, even though, yes, it's uncertain, right? There's potential for this, potential for that, right? And, there's some bad things that come of it and some good things. Like, well, for some people, maybe pornography. It's like, oh, now pornography is propagated so much more than it used to be when it was just done in book form or magazines or photos. Okay, you might look at that and say, if you're against pornography, oh, that's a negative aspect. But look at all the amazing positive aspects that have come about, and as a result of the expansion of these little bulletin board systems and very, very slow rates of speed and everything measured in bytes and kilobytes to now megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes. I mean, look at the amazing things we have at our disposal today. Look at the instant access to online video, audio, podcast. I mean, there's just a myriad of ways, and now with blockchain technology, there's a myriad of amazing positive aspects that have come about and have been massive disruptors to the old establishment corporate elites or cronies or governmental systems. We're seeing there are amazing ways. Freedom, like I say, freedom is uncertain. Freedom requires an absence of top-down authoritarianism and heavily mandated regulation. You've seen with real-world proof, especially you young millennials, you've got the evidence before you right now, if you got a computer, which you all do, right? While you carry one around your pocket, how amazing having that kind of freedom, how many amazing things and aspects and attribute has come as a result of that kind of freedom. We now, though, I'm going to fast forward now into this, 2017, and how just a few bad actors, when you're talking about the grand scheme of things, right? Just a few bad actors, right? So, governmental systems like the NSA or the Five Eyes, like in Canada, or even some of these now giant corporate monopolies, you might as well say now, like Google and Facebook, how just a few bad deeds and bad actors or bad apples are seemingly spoiling that entire basket, that entire beautiful basket that we have had access to, and we still do. At this moment, we still do have an amazing amount of freedom in the digital sphere, throughout the internet, throughout the World Wide Web. People in other countries, maybe less so, maybe not so much. But in modern Western so-called democracies, we still have an amazing amount of autonomous capacity and individual freedom abilities to just say what we have to say, create, innovate, right? Invigorate, evolve. There's so many, like I say, positive things that have come about throughout the modern digital revolution. But here we're looking today is because of the actions of a few bad actors. And this is what I've seen happen so many times, right? And I hate to see it, and I don't want the internet to ever have to be sacrificed up the altar for this collective ideology or through this fucking altruist model where, oh, there's some bad actors, therefore we'll punish everybody because of the acts of those who are unscrupulous, vile, or less than moral in their habits or behaviors or acts. Let's not ever let corporations, governments, or any central planning elitists or dictators or monarchs or so-called deities. Let's not ever let anybody, any group, or any entity ever take away the one true amount of freedom that we have left. Really what we want to do is not just maintain the freedom of the internet, but expand that out into our personal, real-world sphere as well, right? This is a headline article at a CBC News under the Technology and Science section. Tech-savvy investigators are ready to put algorithms under the microscope if companies let them. In the nascent field of algorithm auditing, researchers evaluate the behavior of decision-making code. Now, I'm all for auditing, right? As long as, like I say, as long as it's not done through any pretense of having any semblance of authority to stop things. If it's just someone that wants to shine a spotlight and give the information and do real investigations and allow the people to be the ultimate deciders, the ultimate arbiters of their own behaviors and habits in the digital sphere, I'm all for it. But we never want to place the internet in the hands of these gigantic monopolizing corporations or any central planning governments. We don't ever want that to happen. And you millennials, I expect predominantly, or Gen Xers too, because we were the ones that really grew up when the internet came of age. Millennials, you're a little bit late to the game, and you're more in tune to some of the newer, nuanced aspects of the internet age. But yeah, Gen Xers, we were the very first generation that grew up with the internet, right? So we've been there from the beginning. So in reality, and I'm not leaving out you boomers, you too, or even some of you, the greater generation that are online, we all have to come together and show some solidarity with each other and forget about the fact that we might not like everything we all do on the internet, in the digital sphere, in the digital arena. But we have to allow this freedom to exist because look, I mean, we have the access today. You carry around in your pocket access to all the historical documents, novels, literature. I mean, just basically almost the entirety of human knowledge. You have that in your pocket if you choose to use it that way. Or you could use it to hail a cab. Or you can use it to pay for a service or a product. I mean, the internet has allowed us, think about the many other disrupts. Look at blockchain. You can use it as a currency. There's people all around the globe right now that are using blockchain technology as a currency, as a medium of exchange when governments prevent them from using other means to do so. Or even just as a means of communication. Look at the Tor, right? The onion router. Or the many other aspects where people, the uprising in Egypt would have never happened if not for the internet age. Mass revolutions in many third world or emerging countries would have never happened if it weren't for the amazing capacity and capability for people to have real world capabilities to exchange information in real time at the speed of light. Decades before you could buy a plane ticket on your phone, there were computerized reservation systems, CRS. These were rudimentary information systems used by travel agents to book customers' flights, and they had one devious flaw. By the early 1980s, 80% of travel agencies used the systems operated by American and United Airlines, and it didn't take long before the two airlines realized they could use the monopoly to their advantage, namely by writing code designed to prioritize their own flights on CRS screens over those of their competitors. Naturally, U.S. aviation regulators weren't pleased and the companies were ordered to cut it out. But the case, described in a 2014 paper from researcher Christian Sandving, lives on today as one of the earliest examples of algorithmic bias. It's a reminder that algorithms aren't always as neutral or well-mentioned as their creators might think or want us to believe. A reality that's more evident today than it's ever before. So even so far, it's just a matter of competition. if you don't like what these people have to offer, competition in the free market is how you undermine or circumvent this kind of bullshit, this kind of monopolizing, right? That's the only way. That's the only way. The only moral way. In U.S. courts, reports generated by proprietary algorithms are already being factored into sentencing decisions, and some have cast doubts on the accuracy of the results. Sexist training sets have taught image recognition software to associate photos of kitchens with women more than men. Of course, it's a CBC. Would it be a CBC article if there wasn't some kind of fucking division of the sexes or race, right? They got to interject that shit seemingly into almost everything that they report on nowadays. Sad reality, folks. Sad reality. That's the pettiness. That's the destructive nature of this kind of stuff. But, hey, they're not forcing me to read this, so I'm still cool with it. Although I am being forced to pay for and subsidize the CBC. So there's that. And perhaps most famously, Facebook has been the target of repeated accusations that its platform, which serves content according to complex algorithms, help amplify the spread of fake news and disinformation, potentially influence the outcome of the 2016 U.S. presidential election. So I just did a video, and I uploaded it, and you'll see it. And it's one of my most recent videos where, I debunk all this bullshit in that video, because fake news, before the digital internet era ever come to exist, there were these things called tabloid media, right? That you could buy in any place, anywhere you got your real news, you could always find somewhere that had that fake news, the Globe, tabloid, or the Inquirer. But there was no way to centrally plan or prevent people. There wasn't any security guards or government enforcers standing in the checkout line at your local grocery tent saying, hey, you can't read that. That's not real news. You can't buy that Globe. You can't buy the Inquirer because that's fake news. Like I said in that video, I'll say it again. We were treated as an adults. And don't you expect to be treated as an adult, as an autonomous human being that has the capacity to make up and decide for yourself what you want to read or consume, right? You don't need no central planner dictating to you. Whether you like some of the narratives put out or presented out there, it's your responsibility and role to assume that task of discerning and disseminating what's truth and factual from what's fallacies and fiction. Yet, given the important role algorithms play in so many parts of our lives, we know incredibly little about how these systems work. It's why a growing number of academics have established a nascent field for algorithmic audits. Much like companies already have outsiders review their finances and the security of the computer systems, they might soon do the same with the decision-making code. So, I'm not going to go into any more of this shit. As I can see, CBC, they will never give you any truly nuanced, like something that's like going to expand your intellect in reality. It's a sad fact, I admit. That's why I do what I do, because when I read these things, it's like, oh, come on. Really, somebody's got to do a better job here. If you're trying to educate and inform the populace, do it properly. Do it with proper, objective, intellectual analysis. Not political posturing or sensationalized reporting, right? Come on. But what I will do is post a link to this article in the description of the video below. But before I tie up this video, let me just say, like I said, listen. There's two ways you can handle this kind of situation. And there's always going to be, well, there's more than two actually, because someone else will come up with another way. But the most dominant ways that you can deal with this kind of stuff is, go through governments or central planners, or give some people some pretense of authority to dictate, dominate, and control what you consume or how you consume it, right? Or you can just have a free market of ideas where you can pick and choose what you want to consume and what you consider correct or incorrect. And if there's some way for these companies or another business that will, generate profit or success, or even if it's a charitable business or a church group or anyone that wants to audit these, hey, I'm all for that. Audit the shit out of these. If there's people out there that know how to audit these algorithms and give us some more truth and some reason as to why some of this stuff happens and some of the nuances that are a direct result and a consequence of these algorithms. Listen, an informed and enlightened and educated populace is a much more freer populace and will keep that freedom and responsibility at the forefront and center of their mind. That's great. I'm all for it. So audit away. Audit away. Just don't give anybody, any group or entity, any pretense of authority to dominate and control things. You can educate person, doesn't mean you can, there's a way you can educate person with saying, yes, there's all these things, this is true, this is not. Or you can take away all the other things and say, this is the thing that's true. Forget about any semblance of anything else, right? Denying everything else with a singularity in mind is a terrible way to go about things, right? Because as we've seen time and time again throughout history, some of the people that thought things were right have been proven to be wrong eventually or subsequently. So allow the free market of ideas and allow, people to shine a spotlight on these, maybe if the algorithms that are truly vile or done in a less than moral or desirable way. That's how you do it. Fuck the top-down authoritarian approach. Let's, us people, like I say, let's let our competitive nature and let the free market decide and ultimately decide what is best and what's more suitable for you, and help discern and disseminate truth from fiction and reality from rhetoric. It's the Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.